Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, the Health Watchman, and we're doing this week's Torah portion that's coming up next Shabbat. We're already up to the second Torah reading this year, and it's getting really exciting, and there are different parts of the guidelines and the instructions of our Creator, the Bible, that people get excited about and people don't. But when you look at he begot this son and he begot that son and they live to this age and they live to that age, most people just glance over those and they don't really focus or pay attention on those. But you see some significant things when you do look at those. But this week's Torah portion is Noah. And as I said last week, there are three people we are here for. The reason we're here is Noah, Moses, and Yeshua. It's for those three people that we're here today because they convinced our wonderful Creator to let us stay and to continue to bless us. He had and has every right to destroy us. And it's just a great thing, and it's just wonderful for those three. But Noah here, we're looking at Genesis 6:9 to 11:32. There's a lot we see in this week's Torah portion. As again, we focus Torah Life Ministries on the health aspect, on the relationships aspect, and the modesty, and this aspect. This is what the Father has shown me to talk about, because so many people neglect these things. So many people that call themselves brothers and sisters of Messiah neglect these things. So we are going to be discussing these things. And when we see this week, it's starting in Noah. It says right here in Noah 6:9, it says the history of Noah. But it says in his generation, so this is everyone during the generation of Noah, and Noah was a righteous and wholehearted man. So the first thing we have to look at, he was righteous and wholehearted. I mean, can you be one without the other? Well, I think so. I think there are a lot of people today that try to be righteous, but their whole heart's not into it. And I think there are people out there that their heart is into it, but they're just not righteous because they don't know the word well enough, and they're just mingling the seed too much. But Noah was both. He was righteous. He knew the word. He knew what the Father wanted, and he put his whole heart into it. As it says here in Genesis 6:9, it says, Noah walked with our Creator. Then when we look at, it says in his generation. Well, in his generation, in Genesis 6:11, it says, the earth was corrupt. And that's not too different than a generation today. And Yeshua says, when I come back, it's going to be like the times of Noah. And it's going to be like the times of Sodom and Gomorrah, and what was going on there as well. And what was happening? The earth was corrupt. And it doesn't just say corrupt, it says the earth was corrupt before Yahweh. So that's a big thing. So Noah was a righteous and wholehearted person. And we'll see the health aspects of a lot of the things that Noah did or didn't do, or the people around him didn't do. But remember, our eternal salvation and life is more than just food and more than just health. I do believe it is about relationships. And relationships come down to everything. And if your relationship is not in the right place, you're going to be stressed out, and that will affect your health. So I think the Bible is just a major book that explains about how to make relationships work. Our relationship with our Father in heaven, our relationship with each other, especially our relationship with the one that our Creator brought into our lives as our special partner, our spouse. But when we see divorce so rampant today, when we see so many wars and so many people not getting along and disagreements, well, we see relationships taking a turn for the worse, not the better. And His Word is the standard we need to set, and not just our own feelings. And that's one of the problems today, is people go off their own feelings, and our feelings can get us in a lot of trouble. Now, our emotions are a wonderful thing to warn us when we're doing something wrong, but we need to understand about living off our choices, not our emotions. Because if we let our emotions dictate in our life, there's always going to be someone or something that's going to change the way we think. But when we let our decisions transform and control our life, when we make a wise decision, not under an emotional state, but under a wise time, we're going to stick to those, and we're going to be blessed. And this is what the scriptures teach. We go on to see many of the different things here. It says in this week's Torah portion. Now, last week we saw it said the food for man should be what? In Genesis 1:29, it said the food for man should be fruits and vegetables. It said the seed-bearing fruits and the green herbs should be the food for man. What we see here in Genesis 6:21, after Noah went on the ark, it says that he was told to take all kinds of food that are eaten and collect it for yourself. It is to be food for you and for them, meaning his family that went with him. So there weren't just animals on the ark. He took an abundance of fruits and vegetables on the ark. Yes, not knowing how long he would be there, but he took abundance of fruits and vegetables on the ark, because at that time, that's all that was known of what food was. And it says here again in Genesis 6:21, he was told to take all the kinds of food that are eaten. So at that time, the only foods that were eaten were the only foods that people knew of, and those were the fruits and the vegetables, as spoken about in Genesis 1:29. So it says, this is what Noah did. He did all that he was told to do. So we see here over and over again, it starts off with Noah being a righteous and wholehearted person. And it's more than once in this week's Torah portion where it says, Noah did all that he was told to do by our wonderful heavenly creator. He did all that he was told to do. Not some, all. And this is why I believe he was called a wholehearted and righteous person. But people always ask me about the animals. Well, what about the animals? There were so many animals on the ark, and did he eat those animals? And were the animals for food and so on? Well, maybe after the ark they were for food, but he didn't take them on the ark for food. He took them, number one, because he was told to do so by our wonderful creator. But even more important, he took them on there because there was a custom at the time, or a command or an order given at the time, or a guideline, or whatever you called it, that to please or to honor our creator, there was a sacrificial system that took place. And remember, everyone, this was before a temple was even built. There was still a sacrificial system, which is very interesting because the sacrificial laws of what clean and unclean animals and so on, and the sacrificial laws of the temple were not given yet by Moses to the people. But Noah somehow knew what they were, because Yahweh told Noah to take the clean and unclean animals on the ark. But he didn't just tell him to take the clean and unclean animals. He told him to take 2 pairs of the unclean and 7 of the clean. Well, how was Noah supposed to know what the clean and unclean was if it wasn't given yet in Scripture? Because Noah was a wholehearted and righteous person. He had a wonderful relationship with Yahweh, and Yahweh had revealed these things to him, just like Yahweh revealed many different things to many of the people in Scripture before it had been revealed to us. So Noah knew what clean and unclean animals were, and he was told to take them. And then again in Genesis 7:5 it said, Noah did all that Yahweh commanded him to do. So again, he did all, not just some. He did all he was commanded to do. So we need to understand this concept of doing all he commanded us to do. And remember, this is the foundation of Scripture. This is the second Torah reading of the year. This is Genesis. This is the beginning book, the foundation of everything. And what do we see right away? We see Noah, a great example, doing all, not some, not sometimes, but all that he was commanded to do. So now we can see the start of the drop of the standards of the world, where people start picking and choosing and changing up the thing and everything else. So Noah was given instructions and guidelines, and one of those instructions and guidelines is found in Genesis 9:1, and that was to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth. So the command was to be fruitful and multiply and to fulfill the earth. Translation, have a lot of kids. Translation, birth control isn't of our creator. Translation is, he's the one that decides how many kids we have or shouldn't have. And it says here to be fruitful and multiply. That's the real reason we are to get in relationships, and that's the real reason we are to be here, is to create and bring up the future generations and teach them the Torah, the guidelines and instructions. That's it right there. And here's the command at the beginning and the foundations, be fruitful and multiply. Let's get back to the food thing a second here. It says in Genesis 9:3, it says, every moving thing that lives will be food for you, just as I have given you the green plant before. Now I give you everything. Now many people that complain that we shouldn't be vegetarians today will go on and say, well, this says that we're supposed to be eating meat. Well, it doesn't say you're supposed to. We say he's given it to us. We still have a choice. But it also goes on to say that I've not given you everything and every single animal. I've given you certain animals, the animals that are clean to consume as your food, but the unclean animals are the foods that you should never touch. Now, where does it say that here? Well, it hasn't gotten up to it yet. It says in Leviticus. But again, when he gave this command to Noah, Noah knew exactly what he was talking about. When he says, every moving thing that lives will be food for you, just as I gave you the green plants, every moving thing will be food for you. No, the clean things that he ordained as food will be food to you. And all those other things that are moving, they're never what considered food or nourishment. They would consider a detestable thing, an abomination which he said to always avoid. And if you start partaking in those things, you're mingling the seed, and curses will come upon you. And it goes on to say, even more, even within those clean things I gave you to eat, do not consume the blood of any living creature, ever, 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 throughout all your generations. And when I think about this, I think this command is probably broken more than any other command out there besides the Sabbath. And this command again, do not eat the blood. Do not consume the blood. And now, we don't have to be vegetarians. We don't have to be meat eaters. You know, the word gives us clearly to do when it comes to those two subjects of what we're convicted of. But there are many guidelines to follow within those things. If you are eating meat, you got to make sure you're not eating the blood. You're eating the animals that were told to be clean and okay, but you're to avoid the animals that aren't to be clean and okay. And most important, you're not to overindulge. Same thing for if you decide to be vegetarian. You know, man has taken what our Creator has given us and destroyed it. The food's not what it once was. You can't even find a watermelon with seeds in it anymore, but he tells us it's seed-bearing plants. And when you look at it on a nutritional level, the watermelon with no seeds has more sugar and less nutrients. So many people today are suffering from diabetes and everything else because they're eating and eating and eating, but they're not getting the nutrients their body requires, and it's running into many problems. You see, folks, it's the mingling of the seed that takes the blessings he's given us, and we, in our human desires and nature, change those blessings to a curse. Everything he's given us as a blessing, slowly but surely is being turned into a curse, and this is creating a problem. And us righteous brothers and sisters have to uphold his word. And we got to know what his word is so we can be righteous. And we can put our full heart into it. Wholehearted and righteous. Remember, wholehearted and righteous. Grace and works. Both of them. Knowing what it is and doing it. We look at both of those. What's another things he's given us that we've taken and destroyed? Something he called a blessing and a great thing, which today has become an abomination. You look at homosexuality in today's world. What's the representative of the homosexuality community? It's a rainbow. It's a rainbow flag. But here we see in this week's Torah reading, we see in Genesis 9:13, I am putting my righteous rainbow in the cloud. It will be a sign of the covenant between me, myself, and the earth. So he's talking, this is a covenant between me, our wonderful Creator, and the earth is the wonderful rainbow that I put in the cloud. And then you have the homosexuality community taking and using it as their flag. Again, we've taken the blessings he's given us and we've destroyed it. We've taken these things and created an abomination out of them. We have to rise up as the brothers and sisters. We have to rise up of the righteous one. We have to rise up and set the example of what we to do. We are to be, understand, you can't even be a farmer like we're commanded to do in the scriptures, to grow our food and eat healthy food. We can't even do that anymore. You know, we got big businesses and corporation and factory farms taking away our right to even grow a plant in our own backyard without us getting arrested. It's crazy what's happening out there, folks. We must wake up. Our kids are being drugged up with vaccinations as soon as they're born. You know, we can't even get food that's not genetically altered, you know, without paying the consequences of some legality of somebody saying, well, you're drinking raw milk or something else and that's against the law. If we choose to be a vegetarian, somebody's telling us we need to take supplements or else. And if we choose to eat meat, somebody's corrupting that meat so bad to make it so unhealthy for us, it's getting us unhealthy. We need to go back, not forward. We need to go back to the beginning and see how it was. We look at all the farmers. We look at Noah. It says here in Genesis 9:20, Noah, a farmer. He was a farmer. That's what he did. He didn't just build an ark. You know, did you ever wonder what Noah did before he built the ark? It says right here, he was a farmer. You know, a lot of people were farmers in those days, but that's not happening out there anymore. You know, it also says he was the first to plant a vineyard. Here we go again, taking what he's given us as a blessing and using it to create a curse. So he has this vineyard with all these beautiful grapes, and he makes his wine out of these grapes. But what does he do? He overindulges it and he gets drunk. He overindulges it, he gets drunk. And now we see the important issue of the modesty issue come into play here. You know, I have a whole nother lecture about wine and the intoxication of alcohol that I can give another time. But more important here, we look at the modesty aspect. We saw last week where Adam and Eve realized they were naked and they covered up with fig leaves. But our Creator covered them. That wasn't good enough. He covered them with animal skins, with tunics to completely cover their bodies. What we see here, Noah got drunk in his tent. And what is his son? His son came in and revealed his nakedness. And what happened? His other sons came in and covered his with nakedness. What was the significance? His other two sons were blessed. And Ham, the one that came in to reveal his nakedness, was cursed. You know, Ham was the descendant of Canaan, the land that was taken away and given to Abraham as the promised land. He was cursed for revealing the nakedness as we're told not to do. Today we're continually told not to reveal our nakedness. This continues to happen over and over and over again. You know, this week's foundation of the Torah, the guidelines and instruction, finally gets into the names. And we'll start to see in the future the importance of names. A name came for a reason in the old days. People just didn't name names because they were trendy or something else. They heard from Yahweh what name they should have, and that's when they decided to use it. But we look in 11:29 of Genesis, we look at the history of Abram. Now, many people that don't understand or read the scriptures fully, who's Abram? I've never heard of Abram. It's Abraham. Now, unfortunately, there are still many Christians out there that don't even know who Abraham is. But those of you that know Abraham know that he was the one that was in Canaan, that Yahweh made the covenant with, and said, you will become the father of many nations, you know, and your seed will spread amongst the world. And this is the promised land I'm giving you. That was over 400 years prior to the Israelites coming over the Jordan River and taking their place in the promised land. That was given to them right there, and it says it right here. Abram was Abraham, and he had a wife. His wife, Sarah, and he spoke about exactly the history of Abraham. Now, Abraham wasn't Jewish. He was from Ur, a city called Ur. And it's very interesting. His father was told, or his father was taking a trip to go to Canaan, which today, by the way, is the promised land of Israel. But what happened was, you know, his father made a stop along the way, and his father decided, no, I'm not going to go all the way through. I'm going to stop here. You know, and Abraham stayed there with his family for about 70, 75 years before Abraham took off. And Abraham told his father, look, I got to go. Yah's talking to me, and I gotta get a move in it. I'm going to Canaan. You might not have went, but I'm going. And Abraham went into Canaan, as we'll see in next week's Torah portion. But his father stayed there, and his father died. What a great way to end off this week's Torah portion. What a great metaphor. You know, the father's heading towards the future promised land, and he stops along the way. Maybe he got distracted. For whatever reason he stopped. Kept his family there for many, many years. And then Yahweh speaks to Abraham and says, you got to get going. Finish the journey. Tell everyone out there, whether it's your health, your diet, your relationship, or anything else. You know, I'd like to say our parents had it right. I'd like to say people older than us have it right. But if they had it right, we wouldn't be in the troubles we were in today. It's time we finished the job and we kept moving forward to the promised land that he has waiting for us. It's time to take action and do it. Just like when Yeshua was here and he went up to the people and they said, oh, I got to bury my father and so on. You know, he said, no, I say follow me, you follow me now. Well, he's calling us, all of us, to follow him now. It's time to finish the job and to follow him and not wait or not make excuses to stay behind. You know, that has to be our first priority. And what a wonderful thing that we call Yeshua, a living Torah. Now, if you don't know about the guidelines and instructions of our Creator, the Torah, if you're an average Christian out there or you're someone that's new to understanding the Torah, we'll be going through the Torah portions or the Torah teachings for the full year, the cycle that just started again. We're on the second one. Now, you can look last year, you can go back on my website and see many of these different Torah teachings. Ultimately, it does come down to our relationships. It comes down to our health so we can accomplish those relationships. But there's even more to it that we'll look at. If you have any comments or questions, post them below the video. And next week, right now, here we are traveling. We're in the Midwest. And next week, we'll getting back to our wonderful sunny land. What I call a promised land is South Florida. But until then, if you have any comments or questions, post them below the video. And thanks for checking us out. And just to tell you about next week, next week's portion is Genesis 12:1 to 17:27. And you can go to the internet and you can find a complete list of all the weekly Torah portions. And as believers of Messiah, we are commanded to read all of the scriptures. And as it was said in Scripture, all Scripture is profitable for us. It's not just a new covenant. It's all Scripture. As a matter of fact, when that was said, there was no new covenant or New Testament, as some people call it. It was all the original. So we read that, and that's how we get blessed. Thanks for checking us out. Put your comments below. Check out the other videos on the site. And until then, everybody, have a blessed Shabbat and Shalom, Shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.